I don't remember ADHD or ASD being particularly diagnosed or talked about growing up. I genuinely don't remember hearing about it through my schooling. I think now with more and more people saying, I think actually this might be an issue for me or for my children, then the follow on from that is, okay, well, what do they need to be able to carry on with education, to be able to carry on with work, to be able to have relationships and have good mental health at the same time.
I was actually diagnosed with, at the time, was considered Asperger's syndrome, which I know is actually been updated to autism spectrum disorder. At the time I was diagnosed about 14 years ago, so yeah, late 2010. At the time I was 15, which is actually considered quite late to be diagnosed. Normally people get diagnosed early stages of life, normally before the age of 10, but I mean, you can always be diagnosed later on. I think one of the problems that we have in the Black community is kind of either misdiagnosing or a lack of understanding of a diagnosis, or believing that there is something that's there, especially when it comes to neurodiversity, so whether that might be autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, etc., anything to do with mental health. It's very misunderstood. Growing up in my household, there were traits that I would say that went unnoticed for a while. I actually got it picked up when I went to school, and I was actually got into, I think I was in about year 8 at the time, and speaking to one of the teachers, I think they noticed that there were certain things that I struggled with. So at the time I struggled with, my communication wasn't very great, eye contact wasn't very great. Another thing that I struggled with a lot was like a lot of repetition. My way of understanding things at the time was quite difficult, of kind of looking at things as it has to be a certain way and it can only be this way. So these were things that my teachers at the time had to get in contact with my parents about.
A lot of children, they are in the classroom, they are seen as disruptive, they are seen as bad behaving, and those examples that are in the classroom are also in the workplace. You know, having that conversation in terms of, you know, I realized the gap in learning, the gap in knowledge, the gap in awareness of understanding that being neurodiverse does not mean that you are not capable of doing a job.
Parents, again, once I was diagnosed, almost went into a stage of denial for themselves to even believe that this is something. So it's kind of like, you know, the unfortunate thing was that I got told by my parents was, it's just a label. Don't accept it, but get on with the rest of your life. And unfortunately that was never the case, because going from childhood to adulthood, there was that transition of actually there are still things that I need support with based on my diagnosis, and we can't just pretend that these things aren't there and they need to be addressed.
You don't have to feel alone. And there's nothing wrong with your child. There's nothing wrong with being different. There's nothing wrong with needing to have support on how you are learning. We all learn, it's a curve learning. The way that we learn and we interact with education is a curve. So the fact that you're not able to access the curriculum in a neurotypical way doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means that you deserve to have the additional support that's required to help you learn and thrive in that space. The case of the fact is that they have a neurotypical disorder or condition, which means that they need additional support or additional time in the classroom, or just somebody who's going to take the time to understand how their minds work and what's going on in their brain. The reason why we as a community don't come and get that support is that we feel like we're going to be stigmatized.
So it's breaking those stigmas, because they're there and they are prominent and they are causing so much barriers. And I think that is one of the reasons why I have this urge to advocate so much, because the knowledge isn't there. You know, all of these things have been there for years, but if you are not told, you know, if you are not being introduced to this information, then you're suffering, and you're suffering in silence, and a lot of the time you're suffering on your own.